The Epstein files, the Charlie Kirk, all the presidential stuff. I'd like to find something to make all this make sense, friends. You know, growing up in the 70s and 80s, the only way we had news was the 5:30, 6 o'clock news. You had the morning news, you had the noon news, and you had the night news. You remember that, right? Well, I'm trying to find something to make all this make sense. Why everything's so crazy anymore? Why is the left and right divided like it is anymore? Democrats, Republicans, good and bad. You know, everybody sits on the edge of their seats anymore, just waiting for the next thing to come along. And everybody knows the algorithms do nothing but feed your anger. And, you know, I watch podcasts and all that kind of stuff and the news and, you know, whatnot on YouTube. But all of it does is feed your anger, and I can only stand so much of that. So, you know, I find movies or something else to watch time to time. I watch podcasts like Matt Walsh. I watch my favorite, Derek DeBerry with Vice Grip Garage. You know, just different podcasts and different shows on YouTube, but I can only stand so much of the politics and so much of this thing that divides the left and the right. And overall, I find it better if we stay centered as much as we can, because regardless, the left is still just as guilty of stuff as the right. But friends, you know, this is Billy Teagarden from Teagardens Today. And if you don't mind, please subscribe, like, share, comment, and follow. Hit that thumbs up. I'd sure appreciate it. And go over and check out my other channel, Teagardens in the Kitchen, where we bake, make, and cook your favorite recipes, treats, and eats. Sure would appreciate that. I just got through watching last night got through watching the Clintons' testimony in front of Congress. Did anything new come out? No, not really. Really don't know no any more than what we did already. Is anything going to happen? No, probably not. What do you think? Do you think anything's going to become of all this with the Epstein files and stuff? And, you know, is the Epstein files just a psyops to take our mind and stuff off of what really matters? Because the Epstein files, really, it's not going to change the way we live. And everybody knows that the left is doing nothing but trying to, you know, tie Trump to the Epstein files or to Epstein. And then all the right does is try to defend what's going on with Trump and the Epstein files. But I'm like everybody else. The left had all this time, 4 years, to try to I'll say it here in a minute, right? To try to tie Trump, say that 4 times real fast, to Epstein. And we know that he had something to do with him, but supposedly he kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago years back, and that was supposed to have been that. So, like I said, will anything else come out of it? I don't think so. And why is it people in other countries is going down and stuff, but nobody in this country is really, nothing's happening to them? It's just all questions, right? And another big one I watch is Sean Ryan. And that's probably my favorite. And, you know, if you watch podcasts and stuff, who's your favorite? Who do you really like? But Sean Ryan, you know, he's really, really trying to dig into this child trafficking thing and all, and that's so great. I follow him pretty heavily, And just like Vice Grip Garage, I follow it pretty heavily. But it's all just to make your brain mush, to make it jello, so none of it makes sense. And they'll say this is going on over here, and they'll stay on that for a while, and then they'll say this is going on over there. But the difference between today and back in the 70s and 80s was, like I said, the way we got our news. Now you can get your news minute by minute, second by second almost. And is that a good thing? I don't really think so. You know, they have politicized and weaponized everything anymore. Doesn't matter what it is, it's politicized and weaponized. And it's crazy. Just like all this stuff going on in churches and schools and, you know, all this kind of stuff. The bad stuff, you know what I'm talking about there. It's just all so crazy. And I know the more centered that we can stay with all of this, the better. You know, I do know that mainstream media, your main channels people watch, it's just like here where I live, you know, a lot of old people, your baby boomers, right? And I know a bunch of my viewers and stuff are from that area, and that's cool. But instead of paying attention to nothing but legacy news and mainstream media, you need to go over and you need to watch podcasts, because that's where you're going to find most of the truth. I do know from the people that live around where I do that is what they watch is legacy news and mainstream media news and stuff like that. And I see how people are staying so pumped up on what's going on. Just like, you know, Trump recently, you know, with dropping the bombs and the bombings over in Iran. I don't know what you guys think about that, but that really need to be done. Trump is not a war kind of person. But, you know, during the elections and stuff like that, Trump was basically, if you want to say, the worst of the best of the worst choices, if you want to say. If it would have been Carmilla or AOC or something, we would really be in a mess right now, especially if Waltz would have, you know, become vice president. And, you know, look at all that. Here, they had everybody paying attention to what was going on in Minnesota, Dearborn, Michigan, and all this kind of stuff, and Waltz and stuff. And then all of a sudden, here we go with Iran and what's going on there, and Venezuela. And, you know, news used to be, they would stay on a subject for quite a while, you know. They would stay on something quite a while back in the 70s and 80s and stuff. But now, shoot, 24 hours, 48 hours, whatever the news was, you know, that was yesterday's news, literally. Because now they got you paying attention to something going on over here. But the bombings in Iran, friends, that need to be done, because Trump tried every way in the world to work with Iran. He kept coming to the table, but they wouldn't budge. They wouldn't give. And I understand why he had to do what he had to do. And it's so stupid to turn on TV and to see these protesters going on in New York and stuff like that, you know, against the bombing and stuff like that. Well, and then you see foreigners, you know, I saw a woman from Colombia, just like she was saying, how can people here in the U.S. have an opinion on what's going on over in Iran or in another country when they're not from there? These people in Iran are cheering and stuff. You know, they were death to America, death to America. And what's going to be tomorrow's news? Who knows? You know, now they've got us back on the Epstein files again. Like I said, with the Clintons' congressional interrogations, if you want to call it that. But like I said, nothing new come out than what we already knew. And what was the deal with Congress having to go to Texas, or to having to go to New York to talk to the Clintons? I mean, any other time people come to D.C. and go in front of Congress, that makes no sense. Are they that special? But in the congressional speeches, like I said, Bill said nobody should be above the law, and the presidents, not even presidents and stuff like that. But that's exactly what they're wanting. They're wanting to be held to a higher standard. We know he was involved. Him in the hot tub saying he didn't know the girl that was in the hot tub with him. Don't believe it. Him saying that on the plane that girl worked for Epstein, and that was in a airport terminal, and he had a kink in his neck, and that was the only time that ever happened. I don't believe it. What really gets me is, that they were prepped really well before those congressional speeches, or the congressional interrogations, or whatever you want to call it. And that they were told to explain what was out there, and the pictures are just like the picture with Bill Clinton in the blue dress. He says he didn't know anything about it, and if he did, that all this wouldn't be going on. Do you believe that? I don't. Like I said, they were prepped really well before they went in and done these interrogations and stuff, and they were coached on what to say and what not to say and all that kind of stuff. So, like I said, did we find out anything we didn't already know? No, we didn't. Nothing new, really. It was just, to me, more or less a taking up of taxpayer money and the Congress's time, basically. Because I watched both of them, Hillary and Bill Clinton's interrogations, whatever you want to call it. And like I said, nothing new came out. But I know I missed a video or two here recently, and here in a minute I'll tell you why that is. But I want to talk about Charlie Kirk and all that here for just a minute. I've been around guns, owned guns, hunted, I had all my life. And they're trying to say that he tore that 30-06 down. No, he didn't. The only tearing down he could have done was maybe taking the scope off and taking the bolt out. That's about it. That gun is not that easy to take apart. So they said he tore it down and then put it back together. I don't believe that. Was there more than one trigger man? I think so. Did the person that I can't remember his name, but you know who I'm talking about, that they have in custody and saying that he done it and all. Do I think he really did it? No, I don't. I heard the crack of the gun, and to me that wasn't a 30-06. The 30-06 has a whole lot louder crack and bang. And too many people, too many other professionals have shown what a 30-06 does when it hits or goes through somebody. And like they said, it would have done a whole lot. It would have went all the way through, and it would have took his head off. That's all there is to it. So if it stayed in him and stuff, it was more likely to me that he got shot by like a 38 or something like that, because a 30-06, that's going to do a whole lot more damage than what they say. So that whole thing is more like the JFK thing. And let's talk about what happened with Trump. What was it, out in Utah or whatever, I think it was, when he supposedly got shot in the ear. Like I said, I'm a Trump person, but I think that whole thing was a setup too. And the reason I say that is because just a few days later, he didn't have nothing on his ear. If he would have got nicked by a gun, it would have been a sore for quite a while. I mean, it would have been a whole lot worse. And just to graze him, I don't know. And then that whole photo up after it where he comes up and the flag just happens to drop behind, right behind him after that. I think that whole thing was a setup. And yes, I am a pretty big conspiracy theorist, and my wife knows I'm generally right about all this because I watch both sides and then I form my own opinion to what I think, and that's what you should do as well. When you're on the right side, the algorithm and everything you watch pushes you to that right side as hard as it can. But the best thing we can do is stay neutral to bring the country back together to a more centered foundation. Because the further the left and right swings, the worse and worse it gets, and the more divided we become. So, friends, I just wanted to throw this out there and talk a little politics for a minute. And the reason I didn't have my videos up for a few days is because I had the flu really bad last week. And I know that I'd done the video on Slash and promised I'd do the whole video, and I will. But I just had a few things in my mind and wanted to talk to my friends out there about all this. Leave me some comments. What do you think about all this? When you drive to work, do you listen to satellite radio, XM, or do you listen to local news and stuff, mainstream media and legacy media news? Which do you listen to? If you're listening to legacy news and mainstream news, you're really messing up because they are paid to say certain things. The left and the right owns those legacy companies, and everybody knows it's fake news. So please stay away from that. Tune into podcasts. PBD podcast, that's a really good one. Patrick Bet-David, he really digs into the truth and stuff like that. And that's what I like about your podcasters, because they are more about truth. Everybody's fed up with this fake news, legacy news, mainstream news. Everybody's fed up with it, and you should be too. I never really followed politics till here recently, but how could you not? They have politicized and weaponized everything anymore. So, like I said, friends, the more centered we can stay, the more centered you can stay, the better off. Pay attention to both sides because, like I said, no one side is no better than the other. I think a lot of it is the whole buddy thing. The Republicans are in, and they holler across the hallway, across the aisle. Well, if you let us have this one, when you're back in control, well, we'll do this and this. But I really think that's how it goes. It's the whole, to me, I just wondered, are the Democrats and Republicans in Congress friends? Probably so. They don't talk down about, each other so bad, but you can tell pretty much who the Democrats and Republicans are just by looking at them and just by hearing them. Because, yes, to me, the Democrats are mainly crazy. There are some that make a lot of sense, that do speak sense, like Rokana. I think I said that right. Every time I say that, my wife says you didn't say that right. Rokana, I think that's right. And Fetterman, he's really grounded. He believes in keeping things centered. But what about the Save America Act? I've done polls on social media to ask people what they thought, and everybody thinks it needs passed, but everybody thinks it's going to get passed again. But it's already been shot down in the Senate once by old, can't remember his name. Pretty much to me the oldest one in Congress, Democrat. He's done shot it down once, and he has the power in the Senate and the minority, and he can definitely shoot it down again. And they say 80-some% of Democrats and more of that than Republicans want to pass this, But if one person can get it shot down, then is that for the people and by the people? No, it's for them. So that shouldn't be right. Something needs to be changed there. Need to get. I also put out another poll to where if people thinks that senators and House of Reps and stuff should have an age limit and should have a term limit, and everybody thinks so. There's 4 to 6 years. That should be it. And like president, only be able to serve 2 terms, and that's it. Those seats were never designed to be lifelong careers. They were meant to be a short 4 6 year term or whatever, and then somebody new comes in, and then they go back to the original jobs and stuff. Not be lifelong politicians, if you want to say. So, like I said, I just had a whole lot I wanted to get off my chest, and a whole lot I want to talk to my friends out there about and stuff. So, like I say, friends, the more you can stay centered and pay attention to what's going on both sides, just like Trump is trying to say, and like I said, I'm for Trump, but he's trying to say the border's closed. Well, I watch podcasts to where, no, it's not. There are still wide open parts of the border that the fence is never put up. And why was they never put up? Because during the Biden administration, all the panels were sold off to other companies. So the money's gone and the fence is gone, so it was never built. So is that shut off? No. And you've got your northern border, Canada. Well, all they're doing is routing everything through the north and coming down through Canada, where there's pretty much no border at all, and it's really not making any difference. So to say the border's closed off and nobody's coming in, that's not true. They still are. I guess, the places that they can keep up with and watching stuff, no, they're not. But these coyotes and stuff, they know where to bring people through. They're not stupid. They know what they're doing. And people are still coming in here. Fentanyl is still coming in here. It's just coming, down through Canada. That's the only difference. So there's just so much that, they're saying that are still lies. Both sides lie, and we know that. But, overall, yes, the Republican side is still the side to be on, because that is logic. That is thinking. That is level-headed people. And back when I was young, where I'm from, 70s and 80s again, everybody were Democrats because Republicans were thought to be for the rich. Well, I think that's changed anymore. The Democrats want us to sit up there and say that, talk about millionaires and billionaires and all that kind of stuff. Well, here's what's funny. There's only one Republican that is in the league of the super rich, and that is Elon Musk. Other than that, the rest of the super rich, they're Democrats, and they want to talk about, the millionaires and billionaires, and most of them are Benzos and Gates and all that kind of stuff. They're all Democrats. So it's kind of funny. Everything they talk about, the Democrats talk about and say they don't want, is exactly what they are and exactly what they do want. The trans stuff. And I think that's another thing about Trump. He's an old school guy. So no, he's not going to believe in the trans stuff and all this kind of stuff. And, we do need to be progressive, but progressive in a conservative kind of way. To keep this country what it is, what it has been, and who it has been. Once we lose our identity, we're done. And the Chinese and who else? The Islamic community, everybody knows they're trying to come in here and they're trying to take this country over. The global intifada. That is a global uprising. And I've watched show after show after show that goes back to the 90s and stuff and talks about, they're talking about it, and that's what they want to do. is take over the Western civilization to take control. Just like when we attacked Iran and stuff, they say that there are some sleeper cells in terrorist sleeper cells in the U.S. that woke up, and that's what happened. Just like these migrants that was given licenses shouldn't have them, it's causing all these accidents and hurting people and killing people out on the highways and byways and stuff. Friends, to me, that is just another form of terrorism. There's no way that they can be that bad of a driver. I mean, you don't go down the road and just plow through people and never hit your brakes. That is an act of terrorism, my friends. That's just all that's all there is to it. It's an act of terrorism. So we need to watch. We've got to do something, because that's what the Islamic community is wanting to do. And just like everybody was talking about Minnesota and the fraud and stuff going on there. Well, now you've got Iran and all that stuff drowning that news out. So like I say, what will tomorrow's news be? Who knows? What's the next thing to come up? Who knows? They preach and scream something for a while, and then they'll bury it, and then they'll talk about something and they'll bury it, then something else. So nothing stays relevant very long. And when you can keep up with the news pretty much minute by minute, second by second, well, that's the way it's going to be. News isn't going to last very long. So anyways, friends, I think I've jabbered on enough. I'll get back to my regular stuff, the rock bands and stuff here real soon. I thank you guys if you watched this all the way through, and please leave me comments. Let me know what you guys think about all this. Am I crazy? Do I think right? Or, I have to agree with a lot of what Matt Walsh says. Some of his stuff. But, I can watch, just like Patrick Bet-David and just like Sean Ryan, they'll have people on both sides on the show, and I like that, because you get to see from a level-headed standpoint of what they think, of what they really think. Now, are they lying half the time? Probably so, but you can get a general idea of how they feel and what they feel when they're not up there screaming, trans this and trans that and all this kind of stuff. And when they make logical sense, they're easy to listen to. And people like Sean Ryan and PBD, they're not going to have idiots on there. They're going to have your level-headed people on there. That's why Rokana has been on both of them. That's why Fetterman has been, on so many of them, because they are level-headed and they make sense. And we've got to take these Congress. You go into Congress making $200,000 a year, and within a few years you're a millionaire. You're worth millions of dollars. That is, that's a Nancy Pelosi. That's inside trading. That's all there is to it. And I thought that was supposed to be illegal, but they get away with it. And there's still a two-tiered legal system. There's a system for them and a system for us. There might be three-tiered. A system for the super elite, a system for the middles, and a system for us lower people out there. And have you ever gone to court? I mean, I know many of you probably been in some kind of little trouble in your life, but you ever gone to court and seen rich people in there? Of course not. Because they can pay people, they've got money, they can fight stuff. All you see in a courtroom is your normal day-to-day, your working people. That's all you see. And that's the way they want to keep it. They want to keep it a 2-3-tiered system to where the elites get off and the rest of it, we pay for it. So, like I said, again, I've rattled on enough. I thank you guys for your time. Please subscribe. Go over and check out my other channel, In the Kitchen, where we bake, make, and cook your favorite sweets, treats, and eats. I've got a new one out there. I'll have a new one out Friday, which I think you all really like. So check that out. And I thank y'all so much. Till next time, here on Tea Gardens Today and Yesterday, where we talk about the 70s and 80s and what it was like growing up. And I like to talk about what's going on today with you guys. But till next time, thank you guys so much. See ya.